Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about how Tim Walz is quickly moving up the ranks in the Veep stakes, becoming more and more likely that he is the running mate choice of Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. So Kamala Harris is narrowing down her options a little bit. From what we know, Kamala Harris did indicate to Wall Street donors that she is picking a governor for vice president. Roy Cooper ruled out he doesn't want it. There's really been zero speculation about J.B. Pritzker, so he's probably out of it. So that leaves Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, and Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. So Tim Walz is the choice of progressives. Out of all of these people, I would say he is by far the most progressive, especially based off of everyone's record rather than just their personal beliefs. What they've gotten done, Tim Walz has an incredibly progressive record as governor of Minnesota. So obviously he is going to attract, progressives to his side. Progressives are pushing, more left-leaning individuals are pushing for Kamala Harris to pick Tim Walz as vice president. So what we have, or there's new reporting that House Democrats are supporting Tim Walz for vice president for Harris's ticket. They are pushing Kamala Harris to pick Tim Walz for vice president. Now, Tim Walz did serve in the House of Representatives. He was, unlike Shapiro and Beshear, Tim Walz did serve in Congress from, I think he ended in 2019 when he ran for governor and was elected governor of Minnesota. So, he has some connections in Congress, and that is clearly coming into play. Many congressional Democrats, not publicly, but rather privately, pushing for Tim Walz to be selected. And maybe even more important than that, Bernie Sanders basically endorsed Tim Walz for vice president yesterday. He said that Tim Walz would speak up for working class families, had much more positive words to say about him. And then most importantly, I believe, reportedly, Nancy Pelosi likes Tim Walz the best for VP. Nancy Pelosi is pushing for Kamala Harris to pick Tim Walz as vice president. Several Democrats, of course, are pushing for Tim Walz to be VP. But apparently, this group of House Democrats includes Nancy Pelosi. And time again, we learn, we're confirmed, that Nancy Pelosi gets what she wants. She was the very top voice from reports coming from inside the White House, inside Congress. She was the very top voice telling Joe Biden that he needed to drop out of the presidential race. And during that whole process, we said, Nancy Pelosi always gets what she wants, and Joe Biden seems adamant. So we will see where this goes. We will see if Nancy Pelosi finally doesn't get her way. What do we know? She got her way. It was proven again that she always gets what she wants when it comes to Congress. So I would not be surprised. I would not be very surprised, that is, if Nancy Pelosi doesn't get what she wants when it comes to this vice presidential selection. Now, Tim Walz would definitely be an interesting choice. When you go back years, past presidential elections, there has never been quite a choice like Tim Walz. I mean, this election is different because you have the first African American woman on a major party ticket. Kamala Harris is not like some typical politician. In 2020, of course, Joe Biden wanted to choose Kamala Harris because he was just another old white man. Americans were very tired of them as presidential candidates, and really to unite the Democratic Party, he chose Kamala Harris for vice president, an African American woman. And I believe that Kamala Harris's goal this time around, as she is the presidential presumptive Democratic nominee, that is, for president, she needs to do the opposite of what Joe Biden did in 2020. She needs to choose a normal figure, an old white male, and not necessarily old, definitely not old, but definitely a white male. And of course, what do you see with all of these choices? They are all white males. And Tim Walz, I believe, would be one of the best of these choices when it comes to that. I mean, he looks like, just his appearance and how he talks and all that, his demeanor is your likable older grandpa, basically. And of course, being a white male, that definitely adds that kind, friendly grandpa sort of effect. He is a very likable guy. If you see him speak, it's hard not to like Tim Walz. Again, he's just a very friendly guy, and he's great at making the case. He has been everywhere across mainstream media, all forms of media networks and all that, making the case for Kamala Harris extremely effectively. You might have heard that Tim Walz did originally actually coin that term weird, that word weird, when describing Republican politicians. He was the first to use that, and other Democratic politicians sort of caught on, also using that as well, and so far it actually has been effective. There was a poll they did described J.D. Vance in one word, and the vast majority of Democrats said it weird. I think that will be extremely effective in courting, more independent, apolitical voters come November, and Tim Walz has been doing an excellent job at that, because it is easy for Democrats. I mean, the Republicans, whether you are a Republican, you like them or not, they don't have a platform that is in line with the majority of American voters, not even near the majority with the American voters. So it is not that hard to call out Republicans for things that the vast majority of the American public would disagree with. It's really not that hard, and Tim Walz knows that, and he calls them out for it. And then when it comes to, his electability, that, of course, is the most important factor, when it comes to picking a vice presidential candidate. And I think that throughout the nation, like nationwide vote, in the popular vote, between Kamala Harris herself on the ticket without a VP, and with a VP next to her name on the ballot, out of Bashir, Shapiro, and Tim Walz, who I think would help most nationally, I believe it would be Tim Walz. He is a likable, friendly guy, and I don't even think his age really hurts him because it only makes him more likable, like a grandpa. But, Shapiro and Bashir, I genuinely believe would be great choices as well for electability. But nationwide, I believe that Tim Walz would help the most, especially because many progressives are a little fearful about Josh Shapiro, especially on the ticket. He is much more moderate, especially on the issue of Israel, and Tim Walz as VP would absolutely bring in the progressive side of the Democratic Party that is a little weary about Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor and might not vote for it. Tim Walz would bring those voters in, and even though he is a progressive, and Josh Shapiro would sort of balance the ticket out when it comes to the political spectrum, he's more moderate than Kamala Harris, and he would bring in more centrist voters. Tim Walz I really think would just help just as much as Josh Shapiro or Tim Walz when it comes to bringing in independent, more centrist voters to the Democratic ticket. Again, he is so good at making the case for Kamala Harris and, himself if he were VP, much better than Shapiro or Andy Bashir. In a vice presidential debate, Tim Walz would destroy J.D. Vance. Andy Bashir and Josh Shapiro would as well, but I don't think they would nearly to the extent that Tim Walz would. Tim Walz is 10 times more likable than someone like J.D. Vance, who in poll after poll, Americans really seem to hate. So, Tim Walz, he would be a stark contrast, I feel, in just their kind of personality with J.D. Vance. That would be a very stark contrast, I believe. But whatever. But looking at the electoral map, I made a video the other day about how Josh Shapiro would be the best pick, and that is because he is from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is huge. It is a swing state. Joe Biden only won it by 1.2%. It is very mixed when you look at polls. Some polls show Kamala Harris up narrowly. Some polls show Donald Trump up narrowly. It's going to be extremely close. Josh Shapiro being on the ticket locks down Pennsylvania, but I honestly don't know if it helps. Overall, Josh Shapiro, I don't know if he is as good as a pick as Tim Walz, because yes, Tim Walz doesn't lock down any critical battleground state. That's Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. He doesn't do that. Shapiro does. But he generally does help, especially across the Rust Belt. He is Someone who will be seen as fighting for the working class, working families, right especially across the Rust Belt. These white working class voters that voted for Donald Trump in 2016, some did again in 2020. Many stayed home. Many voted for Joe Biden. He would return those white working class voters to the Democratic Party. I mean, he is a traditional Democrat. He is what the Democratic Party used to be some number of decades ago, where they always, every single election year, carried Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, because they were the party of the working class. Now they have kind of drifted away, and Tim Walz as vice president would be incredibly effective in bringing that message back. That will be critical in the blue wall, and if Kamala Harris can win Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, then she wins the election right there. So Tim Walz, I feel, would be an incredibly good vice presidential selection by Kamala Harris. It looks more and more likely that he will be chosen. Kamala Harris, if she wants to win, definitely should either choose him. And now, I made the video the other day how Josh Shapiro is the best choice. But I must say, now I'm kind of leaning towards Tim Walz as being the best choice electorally. I'm kind of changing my opinion on that. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe down below. That helps out a lot. Again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.